These are not cries for help.
That'll be on the recording, by the way. Good morning, everyone. Just gonna open up the Zoom room here, let people filter in. Good morning, good afternoon, from wherever you are. Thanks for being with us. Okay. I mean, we can probably just go through the intro part now, and then we'll have more people in when we get to the good stuff.
Okay. Well, hi, everybody. Welcome back, or welcome in the first place. This is one that we hope to do another sort of in series. And because it's big and it touches a lot of us. And it's also probably under discussed, at least in palliative care, human palliative care circles anyway. And it's just so friggin' delightful to hang out with Mary Gardner, who is, I don't know, Mary, I don't know what you are. I don't know what the hell you are. You are, besides a dynamo, so Mary started Lap of Love, this beautiful hospice practice. I can let you talk about it, but that's like one smidgen of the thing. You've written humongous comprehensive books. You're just about to put another one on, and you're a friggin' awesome person and fun to be with. So anyway, welcome, Mary. Welcome back, Mary.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, on that note, do you want anything else you want our audience to know about what you're up to? What's the title of your latest book, for example?
Oh my goodness, thank you. So I wrote a book last year, which was for caring for your geriatric dog, and that book's name is It's Never Long Enough. And so I had to make a cat book also, because as much as I love dogs, I also love the cats. So my cat book is 9 Lives Are Not Enough. So they're so I had to make the titles a little bit like similar in some ways. And those both of them go through the aging process, ailments, and how to manage them in the home, assessing quality of life, end of life decisions, and ways to honor and memorialize the pet. So it's there. That's why they are big, because it is a big topic, like you said as we started.
Yeah. Well, thanks for doing it. I have the dog book, and I look forward to getting the cat book.
I know. Well, because your cat is in my book, so
Muffin Man.
I'll probably send you one, actually.
Oh no! I'll let me buy it. We need to support you struggling artists in the world. But oh, that's so beautiful. I forgot the Muffin Man. Oh, that makes me very happy. Guys out in the audience, some of you have been here, have met my cat, the Muffin Man, who was a pretty special little guy who died in December. So this one's for Muff.
Yeah.
So, all right, Mary, we probably should move us along here. So guys, audience, people out there, thank you for coming. I think, many of you will know that these are meant to be informal, a safe place to sort of say and think and feel just about anything. There are no real rules except for basic kindness and respect. But also let's get a little bit more specific. Sonia, do you want to jump in and help us with the mechanics of all this? There we go.
There we go. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. So just a quick logistics check-in. So Mary and BJ are going to go through a set of slides and just kind of talk about different themes around the topic. And then after that, we get to the fun part, which is getting to your questions and concerns. So you can either click on the raise your hand button and we will unmute you on this end and you can speak with BJ and Mary, or if you prefer not to do that, you can type it into the Q&A section and I will read it aloud for you. The chat is also open, so if you have any thoughts, as we're going along, please feel free to put them in here and we can, address them, or if you want to just kind of give a shout out to a certain thought, that's what the chat's for. So again, raise your hand, ask your question out loud, or type it into the Q&A and I will read it for you. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you, Sonia. And as ever, we have Sonia to thank for all sorts of things, including the beautiful slides. So thanks, Sonia. It's freaking awesome.
My pleasure.
Okay. All right, guys. Mary, want to jump in?
Sure. Oh my gosh. I think we all know that our relationship with pets have changed. I'm just turned 50 in January, so I've made the mark. But even in my lifetime, the significance of animals have changed, right? I grew up in rural New York, and my dog was tied to the dog house outside, barely allowed in my house, right? And now look at Maisie is sitting on your couch, right? Is probably she'd probably maybe, we won't tell everyone if she sleeps with you in your bed or not, but she may. Like
She does.
Exactly.
On the pillow.
Yeah. And the percentage is amazing on how many people think that their pet is a part of their family, like 86% or something like that. And I think many of us do consider them a very important part of our family. And when we get the pet, it's amazing. And when we lose the pet, it could be life-changing. And that's actually why I became a veterinarian, is because of the death of my own dog. I was in my 30s. So I was a late bloomer as a vet, if you will. And the loss of my own dog is what made me consider going back to school and becoming a veterinarian. So the significance is great.
I didn't realize that story, Mary. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot I have found too. What you're saying obviously resonates with me, but it's also can be a little jarring. So I know when I meet folks for whom animals are really, they belong outside, they are,
Right.
part of a version of work. I've had service dogs in my life. That's a kind of a working dog. Anyway, the just to call out the significance is
Right.
huge for some and vastly differently exercised in the world. And I find myself I get a little judgy when I see dog relegated to a penned-in area, or So what you're saying is just also a little bit loaded.
True. True. And culturally, we're all, we're very different. And you could be in an area of the world or even the United States, where dogs are still really considered outdoor, things. A cat is a barn cat. And I think it is important for us not to be judgmental. And what animal, I know we're talking about dogs and cats, but horses, rabbits, guinea pigs, things like that could be hugely important to a family. My uncle, who passed away last year, it was his cockatiels, and they were his world. And when he passed, we were trying to figure out who's going to take his cockatiels. But to some people, they're not significant. And I think it can be jarring, BJ, to talk to somebody who's like, it's just a cat, why are you so upset? And that's, and they are a part of our workforce also. And like you said, service animals, they're also, dare I say, a part of our food industry. And I'm actually a vegan because I took an oath, and I just can't. So no judgment to anybody, and whatever anybody wants to, how they live their life, but I just don't want any pet to suffer. So as long as that can be, right? So
amen.
I gotta tell you, I think if I was a cat, I wouldn't mind being a little barn cat. But I wouldn't probably also mind laying in your sunbeam. So
right.
your house.
Right. But I also think, I know we'll get moving here in a sec, but I think also I think a friend of mine, Laurel Braitman, wrote a beautiful book. I can't remember the title of it, where she encourages us to anthropomorphize animals more. And I do think this idea that humans are the only ones who are conscious or have feelings is patently ridiculous to me. But I do know we animals of various stripes, we are animals. I think that's an important statement.
Right.
And we experience life differently with different nervous systems, et cetera. So, and I think it can go as much as Maisie and other animals I live with are certainly part of my family. I think it's also, we can be a disservice to treat an animal like a human. In other words, like feeding them McDonald's or, other things that feel like a kindness to the animal. Sometimes it is not really a kindness. We are different in some ways. I just want to state that too. So
true.
Lots to say in here, but maybe we should keep moving, huh? Picture, beautiful. So I think you'd encourage us to extend the same sort of palliative mindset of caring about quality of life. This very sort of, this phrase extends in all directions, including to our other animal friends.
It does. And this is probably the number one question I get as a hospice veterinarian is, how will I know it's time? Or like, how do I assess quality of life? Because for us in the animal, in the vet space, we have euthanasia. So when we're talking about quality of life, it really means, when somebody's asking me about that, they're asking, when is the time where we pivot to it's not being a good quality of life and we should think about end of life. And so this is a very difficult conversation to have, but it is vital and important to have with families. And quality of life, though, is so subjective, BJ, right? Like what is quality to you versus me for our own lives is very different. And so it's also very different for humans. A pet that is panting and pacing all night is maybe having anxiety and not having a good quality of life. Also, the family's not having good quality of life because they can't get to sleep. And it's a difficult thing to care for your pet. And I think we could all agree that that's not great. But what about incontinence? So if you've got a dog with mobility issues and they're pooping in the living room, is that a bad quality of life for the pet? And that could seriously be debated. Like, I've been in debates where people say, no, if I was incontinent, like you were saying, anthropomorphizing, if I was incontinent and, I wouldn't be happy. And I'm like, well, usually the dog just poops and they don't care. They're like, clean that up. But sometimes my girl, Sam, she had incontinence. She had a spinal lymphoma and she would fall and then her poop and then it would get smeared all into her. And I feel like she actually knew that she did something bad. So this is about a 30-minute conversation I have with all my hospice families about how to assess quality of life. What does suffering mean to them, right? Like, BJ, if you ask 10 people what is suffering, they will all have a different definition. That's right. You and I would have a different definition. And what is suffering to a pet is different to us. And so it is definitely something I want people to realize. And it also, you mentioned the word palliative care, and that is really important because, as a hospice vet, as a hospice physician, I'm sure you get the same thing that I get is, aren't you sad and depressed in what you do? And you're, dealing with death a lot. And, I know both of you and I, we've had this many conversations is no, like I can be sad, but I am not a sad person about what I do. I find a lot of joy in helping families. But what is sad to me is that in the United States, 50% of dogs and cats are not seen by their veterinarian a year before they die. So if you're talking about animal lifespan, like if we were to not see our doctor for when we were in our 90s, that's like the equivalent. Your entire last decade of your life, you don't see a doctor. You don't get medication to help you with your arthritis or, nutritional support and appetite stimulants or anxiety medication. So 50% of pets are not seen by their doctor. By the time I do see them, that's what makes me sad is I could have done so much more if we saw them sooner, and not even just in hospice, just, geriatric phase. So that's what I hope, one of my missions in life is to get them to the veterinarian.
Yeah, you bring up a couple of things there, at least. I mean, of course, one being this subjective thing. How to tune in to your pet, to your animal, how to know. You can project what you would want to live with, et cetera, like you say. I probably wouldn't want to be pooping on the floor. But so the real art or craft of reading this animal is something I'd imagine that takes. I wonder how often you coach people how to read their pet.
Yeah, what's interesting is most families know their pets better than I do, right? You know Maisie, right? And I know I have a dog, Norin. I know Norin, and I know it makes him happy. So that's what I'll go over. I'll say, okay, let's go over their joys of living list. That's what I call it. So, and I have a lot of this in the book because what makes Maisie now too, right? And because what was Maisie when she was a puppy is very different than now. It's like what makes BJ now is very different. So, And so I want to write down those joys of living. And also, are they still doing those things? Because that's what brings them happiness. Honestly, Norin, my dog, if he could just sit next to me all day, that would bring him happiness. He actually has separation anxiety. So when I leave the house, it's a big deal to him. That's not happiness. So every pet is so different, and it is a very customized conversation. And but owners do know what makes their pet happy. What happens towards the end of life, though, is they start to stop doing those things. And when we see it every day and we're going through it for 10 months or 12 months, you almost forget what brought them joy. And we also sometimes think, oh, well, they're just getting old. And I can't tell you how many times people are like, oh, well, the dog's slowing down, so it's just getting older. The cat can't get to their sunny spot because they're just getting old. Yeah, but we can help them, and we can give them some pain management. We could set their house up a little bit better because they still want to go for walks. They still want to lay in the sunbeam. So I think there's so much that we can do when we start diving into what quality of life means for that pet. But it's also important to say what quality of life is for the family, because managing a geriatric or terminally ill pet can bring on caregiver burden. Oh, look at this. It's like she knew. And you know what? I got a lot of this. I once went to a human geriatric conference, BJ, and because I was like, what does a human geriatrician do? I mean, like, why don't we have that in veterinary medicine? And so they said, at the time, they said there are three major things that they deal with. One is polypharmacy, so lots of drugs from different doctors that they're dealing with. Two is cognitive dysfunction, so dementia in humans, which sadly we have in our pets too. So, and they just said that's so big in human. And then the third thing is caregiver burden, because the family is caring for that person. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's actually very much what I deal with as well. And it takes a lot to care for a sick pet.
Right on. And it may be, and that's part of the dynamic. As we get into trouble with the human world, when the caregiver says, well, it's not about me, they're just being completely depleted. Well, it is about you. These are relationships, not animal in isolation, you in isolation. This is a dynamic between you. So you, caregiver, you, family member, are very much part of this equation. I don't know about, I spend a fair amount of time just coaxing people into that realization. I'd imagine you do too.
It's one of my 5 pillars of my hospice appointment, is talking about caregiver support, burden, burnout, and ways to help manage that. On average, it takes 3.5 hours a day for someone to care for a sick or terminally ill pet. So, or an aging pet. That's everything from being up, early because they're up early, to cleaning up the poop off the floor, to getting their meds down them, to whatever it may be, slower walks. And that's a lot, that could be a lot. And I always say there are 4 budgets in life, and this is good for many things, but one for caregiving is there's a monetary budget. So can they afford the treatments? And it could be usually at end of life there, it's not actually very expensive. It's pain management and anxiety management. We're not looking for chemotherapy. We're not doing surgery. We're just doing palliative care. So it's not typically very expensive, but some people can't afford $50, $60 a month for painkillers. Like that's just too much for their budgets. The other budgets, though, which people forget about, is the physical budget. Can they lift this cat up? And can they lift a dog up? And even though I could lift a 70-pound dog, not everybody can. Can they clean up that poop on the ground? My mother's has double hip replacements, and she can't get on the ground. So when her dog has an accident, it's a challenge for her to clean that up. Then the other budget is the time budget. So do we have more time in our day to care for them, give them the meds, be home from work to give the meds at the right time, let them out because they are incontinent, or whatever the ailment is. And the fourth budget is emotional budget. Are you able to handle all this? And I don't mean that in a judgy way at all. If you can't, then I support your decision to say goodbye. We all have 99 problems going on, right, in our lives. And sometimes your emotional candle is burnt out and you cannot handle it. And then we have others on the other end where they will not stop caring because they don't believe in euthanasia, or they think they're giving up, or they felt like they gave up too soon on another pet. So there's a lot to this.
Mhm. I'm so glad you called those out, including the financial piece. I mean, I super salute the idea of getting vets involved, and also acknowledging the challenge that costs money,
Yeah.
and often a lot of the recommendations made by that vet cost money. And so, one thing that illness and death can do for us is can help us get really real. And realness includes all of these things you're saying, and they're all variables, and that's okay. It has to be okay.
Yeah.
So thank you for mentioning all that, Mama. I guess also one other thing to say, with just to call out, as within humans, like we're skewing the conversation towards old age, but just like humans, animals get sick from other things and can die young and early too. So that's also in the realm of our conversation here, not just old age.
Right. Yeah, that's what I try to say. Yeah, I always try to say, like, old age or terminal illness, right? So you could have a young Rottweiler with osteosarcoma, and they're only 4. That adds a different emotional aspect to it, because you don't have as much time. And it's absolutely the same in humans, right? So if somebody has a disease that's early on, even 30s or teenage, like it's just people will say it's not fair. So
I'm not sure where that line is where it becomes fair, but there is
right.
Yeah. I'm not sure where we go from too soon to live long enough. These are very murky lines, but we all know there's something to that too. There is.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. Well, here's a biggie. Yeah.
Yeah. This is a biggie. This is this is a lot, most of what I do. So at Lap of Love, we go to homes and we help families say goodbye in their home. And even a lot of our hospice appointments end up turning into euthanasia, because it's the best thing for that pet at that time. And we help the family with that conversation. And, some people call euthanasia a gift. There's some people who do not believe in euthanasia. And I think a lot of that is just it's them making the call to say it's time. And so I try to take that guilt away from the families. It's me and you making that call, right? It's I'm helping you make that decision. And also, what a family can handle, their 4 budgets are very different than my 4 budgets, right? So it's not for me to say, well, if this was my dog, what would I do? And a lot of people do say that though, BJ, if this was your cat, what would you do? So I have to be very careful, because what I would do might be different. And so I'm trying to understand the dynamics of that family. But euthanasia is sad. It's sad, right? Like that's why I named my book, It's Never Long Enough. We do not have enough time with our pets at all. So, but we can also make it beautiful and make sure that we honor them and give them the goodbye they deserve, and not hide it away and make it so, we're very death adverse. And I remember, BJ, in the one movie I saw of you, or you were talking about in your hospice world, where you would, like, the body was just like laid out for everyone to come and put flowers and say goodbye, and like it wasn't like hidden, which I think so many places still do. And I think I love going to homes where they have flowers and poems, like the kids will write poems, and I get to place it with the pet for cremation. And so I think we will still be sad, but I want to try to take away regret. And having a bad death brings on a lot of regret. And what people don't realize, they want their pet to die naturally. In human medicine, usually we help them along with some good drugs, right? We don't usually let a person die without drugs. And I actually lost my sister over the summer to liver failure. And, she was on high doses of morphine, because it is not a peaceful process without that. And so if we just want our pets to die naturally, talk to your veterinarian, because I think we want to make sure that they're not in pain or have anxiety during it. And what people also forget too is that if they do natural passing, it's not on their time. Mother Nature, she doesn't let you know. So you could be out for the day at work and come home and your pet's gone and you didn't say I love you before you left, right? Or you wanted one more lick from them or something like that. So what's nice about euthanasia is that you can have who wants to be present. You can have a party if you want. You can have a silent moment if you want. You can have music playing. You can cry the house down, all that good stuff.
Yeah. In the human world, as you know, the closest thing we have to euthanasia is sort of aid in dying, which is for different details. And I think it's only now, it's still 10 states, I think.
Is it 10? I didn't know if it was 9 or 10.
I think it's 10, I'm pretty sure, including DC, where you can, where a physician can prescribe lethal medication and you can structure and organize the death moment a little bit, just as you're saying. The word euthanasia, it's interesting, the Greek, the etymology is good death, literally. That is what the word literally means.
Yes.
But I think we ought to just call out the relativity of language, good, bad, these are tricky words. But I think here again, we know the direction we're talking about. And maybe more specifically, what you're calling out, I love this idea of avoiding regrets. That's a very useful thing in the human world too, as a useful force to organize some thoughts around. But it really, I think what we're both calling out is we don't want unnecessary suffering.
Right.
That if there's a enemy, I don't like that word, but if there's something we're pushing against, really isn't death per se. It's just, it would be gratuitous suffering. Does that register with you as well, Mary? Yeah.
No, it does. And, I try to remind families that we're not ending life. We're ending the dying process because that pet is dying. Or their living isn't so good. For instance, dementia, like in dogs. It may take years for them to pass, and it's not from that. But their life until then is really not living. When it's so severe, and so it is such an ambivalent. Like we can have such mixed feelings on this. And you could be like, yes, I agree with euthanasia, but only after XYZ time, right? Where then there's some rules behind it. And I always say, so we like to say there's a period of time where I will not euthanize a pet. They have a good quality of life and the family's okay managing things. On the other side, there's a period of time where I won't leave that house unless I euthanize that pet. Like that pet is actively suffering. And that is my oath to protect that pet. In between is a subjective time period. And at any time when a hospice family, I'm helping a hospice family, I put them in that subjective time period. I felt that sneeze coming. Thank you. And then if they have a terminal illness that will take their life in 6 months, I'll put them in that subjective time period. If they've got a lot of ailments because of age, I'll put them in the subjective time period. And at any time, I'll help you say goodbye. So if you've had a really hard weekend and the dog wasn't sleeping, they didn't eat, whatever, and on Monday morning you call and you say, okay, Dr. Mary, it's time. Then I support your decision. If they had a really great weekend and you call me Monday morning and say, it's time because I want that to be what she remembers and what we remember is the great weekend, I support your decision. And that not everybody agrees with either one, right? So I always say too, it will always seem too late or it's too early until it's too late. And I want to avoid that regret of too late.
Yeah. If I'm honest, I think my last dog, Vermont, I think I went a little too long, I must say. I thought a lot about that, especially as Maisie ages. But yeah, it's not an easy line to call sometimes unless you cross it too, Right.
That's where that's such a good point because you said that so beautifully, because so many people say, oh, I'll know exactly when to euthanize. And yeah, we all do when we've crossed the point. We all know that it's obvious. Or if you saw a bird get hit by a car and they're suffering on the side of the road, we all would say, let's euthanize this bird, right? But before that line is crossed is a very gray zone. And that's where my subjective time period is, where I support your decision. I am my goal is that every pet gets a good goodbye and a family gets to say goodbye with a dignified, loving experience. And it's not always. And so, but my goal is, that's my goal.
Right on. Beautiful goal, Mama. All right. Well, are these, I wonder, what do you think?
Yeah, there is a lot of grief that goes around saying goodbye to our pet. There's also anticipatory grief where you start, you may already now, BJ, be thinking about Maisie as she's getting older, right? And having a little, right? Like I do as well. And my boy's 9, so I know I've got a few more years unless he gets a bad disease. But once you start seeing the gray hairs around their muzzle, it can start hitting you, and it could be life-changing. It could be, you could be in a state of massive grief. Look at me. I was in grief over my dog and changed my life to go to vet school. Like this is, also, sometimes people are okay. They manage their emotions in such a way that they understand that's just the life and death process. And and some people can judge them to be like, wow, you're going out to dinner after you've said goodbye. And then also other pets do grieve too. So I don't know if Maisie grieved when you said goodbye to your kitty, right? Like,
To
so
Muppet. Yeah. My sense is so, yes, my sense is she did.
Yeah, they absolutely can. They're like humans, where it's a range of what they go through. And it could be everything from just moping around. They could be not eating. They also go off of your emotions a lot. And I'm very sad when I lose my pet. Like I'm crying for days. Like I go through a whole process. And so my other dogs and cats are like, uh-oh, something's wrong with Mom. So they pick up on that too. But grief is just I always say it's just the outward expression of the love that we had. Yeah. And that's okay.
Amen. And to your point, there isn't a really objective right way, and you will receive a lot of judgment from others oftentimes. I just one other thing to note from, you're mentioning anticipatory grief. Yeah, that is certainly a real thing. I'm seeing a lot of it with Maisie these days. And I will say from my own experience in working with others, one of the things I kind of love about anticipatory grief, again, forgive the language, it's always a little off, but it can be as though you get to share the grief, the mourning period with the animal, with the loved one while they're still here, which can set up, when the death finally does come, a lot of the work of grief is happened already. And that's, that's not always the case. But it's one way, it's one reason to, if you feel, I don't think you can manufacture feelings, but if you feel that anticipatory grief, I've heard a lot of people kind of shush themselves. Well, I shouldn't feel sad, they're still here. So, kind of stiff upper lip, and I get that impulse, that it's kind of weird that we would grieve the loss of the thing who's still with us, but that's the human mind. We move backwards and forwards in our minds through time all the time. So I just would encourage people to roll with that anticipatory grief, because it can allow that to be a shared experience with the thing you're one of these days going to lose. So,
yeah, no, I agree. I think the hardest losses for me have been my pets that have died suddenly. And I didn't get to say, I love you. I didn't get to do bucket lists with them. I didn't get to do photo shoot moments with them in their old age, like all the things I want to do. And so when that's taken away from you so quickly, and you don't actually get to go through that process, I think could actually lead to harder times getting over, not getting over. It's so hard, right, BJ? We got to be careful of our words. I don't mean getting over. You'll never get over them. But getting through that grief, I think it's easier when you can have that period of time. That's why I think hospice is beautiful. It allows us, and I can't stand when people don't want hospice. They're like, oh, no, and they're so scared of it, and they just think they're giving up. And no, they're, this person, this pet will be passing, and let's prepare ourselves. I wish we knew what my sister wanted to do with her dogs. And after she passed, we didn't know. It was, and I think that would have given her comfort. And And, you know, with our dogs, I think, and our cats, it's a lot for us because we want to do the things with them. But boy, wouldn't my pet enjoy one more time at going for a car ride with me and things like that, and just loving on that.
Right on. Well, one of the takeaways for me is listening to you, Mary, is, you know, if there's advice in here, of course, it is to not wait to love your animal. Not, you know, that's one of the ways to prevent some of that unnecessary regret or avoidable regret. And I suppose same goes with the sort of mechanical things like advanced directives for animals, thinking through your own advanced directive. What if I go, what's going to become of Maisie and my cat Darkness? And anyway, a little planning probably goes a long way here as well.
It does. Yeah, so many people don't plan for cremation or burial or aftercare options for their pet until they're being euthanized at the clinic, and then they're forced with, do you want the ashes back or not, right? And then they feel guilty because if they don't want the ashes back, then they feel guilty like they don't. And it's okay to not want the ashes back. It's okay to let the crematory spread them. You're not maybe attached to that, but so many people feel guilty into that. But I think being able to plan is nice, and maybe it is just, you know, making a garden in the back with all the sticks that they brought home from walks, and honoring them that way, and starting that before it's too late, and making little stones with their paw prints in it and things like that. All day long, I could go through ideas.
You're a fountain. Okay, I can see a lot of questions already. Or
I know we better get going on those.
We'll get moving. I mean, there's a little, cover this a little bit, but more to say. Is there more to say here?
Well, I think it's, you know, at Lap of Love, we get a lot of phone calls every day to plan a euthanasia, and 50% of the people who call us need us same day. And because we wait until the very end. And I would just like to encourage people to think about planning for it. And I do think it is the quality of life aspect is you know, when to say goodbye, when their quality of life is deteriorated. And on our website, on Lap of Love, we have so much information, and in my books too, about assessing quality of life, and there's scales out there and things like that, that could help almost objectively, you know, give it a number almost, if you will. And it just helps guide you. It's not like, oh, they got a 4 today, I better call the doctor. But when to say goodbye, also mechanically, do you want it on a weekend? Do you want it at home? Do you not want it at home? Do you want it at, you know, in the car? I've done a euthanasia in the car because the dog loved the car. And so, and it was great. They were like, you're doing it in the car? I'm like, yeah, I've been under pianos, on many beds, on a boat, on a beach, in cars, and if we can plan it, we can make it a little bit better. So quality of life is when to know we need to call, but I wish we could call even a little bit sooner to make the plan a little bit better. And a lot of people wait, BJ. So, you know, we get a lot of people that, I just want to make it to the holidays because of the holidays, or I want to make it to the holidays because John is coming back from school and he wants to say goodbye too. Do not wait for us, right? They don't know it's Christmas. They don't know, you know, it's the holidays or anything like that. So make sure that we give them, you know, we promise to take care of them. And that also means saying goodbye when it's time.
Amen. Well, and that kind of cut us here, like, because I was, to your point, it may be when you know we're getting close, or know the death's somewhere in the zone, you know, Maisie's 13. Now I know we're getting there. So to your point, I think a moment ago, it may make sense for me to just plan a little bit, call my vet now and talk about when to know what to do. Do I call them? Do I call Lap of Love? Do I, just start?
Yes, you should, BJ, call Lap of Love, but that's besides.
Should. Yeah, I really should, because I would love to be at home with her. So, but to your point here, like, you can begin in the conversation in advance, and then when you feel that moment is right, then the some of the pieces are in place, and it's one phone call. And when things are really falling apart, it's not a great time to plan. So,
correct.
And anything else to say about hospice for animals that you haven't touched on already? We
touched on so much already. I don't want people scared of it. it doesn't mean that we're going to be talking about euthanasia. I mean, I do want to talk about euthanasia, but we could, and I think this is true in human hospice, the sooner a person or pet starts hospice, actually, they will live better and oftentimes live longer, but live good longer, right? And I think so many people say, oh, hospice is prolonging suffering. No, suffering is happening. And what we're trying to do is take that suffering away so that way we could live good until they die. And that's what it is to me.
Yeah. Amen. And the phrase, like when you were talking a moment ago, for me, it was sort of like getting, like, sometimes I feel like if I call hospice this giving up thing, or I'm welcoming, I'm asking for death, almost like a superstition. I think of hospice, the phrase that came up as you're saying, that was sort of like it's more like getting right with nature. Like you're not causing death here. This is
right.
You feel that way. Death is coming, getting out of the way of it, getting right with that natural statement is, I think, very much what hospice can be about.
Yeah.
All right. Well, one last slide, and then we'll get over to you guys out in the audience.
Oh, when to get another pet? Another good question. I think I might even have a whole chapter on this because I get this a lot. Some people want to get a pet before the other one dies, which I think is fine if you can manage it, because a lot of times you're managing a lot with taking care. And now you've got a new pet, whether it's an older pet that you adopt or a puppy or kitten or something like that. Like they take a lot of time too. But and some people, for me, every pet was different when I needed to get another one. For my boy Neo, who was a Doberman, I missed his presence in the house. I knew I was never going to get Neo back, but I missed his presence. I missed the smell. I missed the noise. The silence was deafening when he was gone. And so I immediately went onto a Doberman rescue and found Duncan, who was 6 years old. And I adopted him like as soon as possible. Sam, who I lost recently, it was a very intense care, and for about 9 months, and it was a lot. And I said, you know what? I need some time off. I need to just, do Mary and and go to dinner without worrying about getting home at a certain time. And that's okay too. So I think it's what, you've been through with saying goodbye. And I can't imagine having life without a pet, but I could also imagine a period of time without one. So I could travel without worrying. But as soon as I get back, I'm at the shelter.
Right on. And here again, no real right or wrong answer. Okay, Mama. Well, that is beautiful, Mary. Thank you so much. I'm going to pull us out of the slides, and Sones, questions or comments?
Yeah, we've got quite a few. Hey, Mary, just a really quick logistical question. I guess when people search your book, the dog book, it comes up as a part of 3. So we just want to confirm that it is in fact one single book.
So that's a good question. The book itself is one book, and that's It's Never Long Enough, or 9 Lives Are Not Enough. I do have a companion journal. So if you're going through hospice with your pet, there's a journal. So that's what you see. And then also for each, so dog and cat. And then I also have children's activities books. So if you've got a child in the house and you are planning the loss or after the loss, it could be very helpful for parents that don't know how to have the conversation and they're scared to talk about it with their kid. And so there's a lot of different, things like word finds, but also activities that they can do, like write a blog about your dog, or be a reporter and go ask everybody in the house the best things they loved about their pet, or how to make memorial items for their pet. So those are the 3 books, but the book though is the one that I mentioned, but all are on Amazon or Barnes and Noble and things like that.
Perfect. That clears it up. Thank you. One of the questions that came in was, how often should we take our senior animals to the vet? I know each case is different, but once a year doesn't seem like enough.
Absolutely not enough. At least twice a year. And I always do recommend blood work and a urinalysis. So examining the urine of the pet. And I personally do that twice a year. I know that not everybody can afford that, but to me, most of my pets didn't really cost too much during their younger years. And so I kind of banked it up, and absolutely, because, the aging thing about like, oh, it's 1 year to 7 years, that concept, it's not actually like that. It's very fast in the beginning and then it tapers off. But can you imagine yourself not going to the doctor when you're older for a year or 2 or 3? And that's kind of what it's like. So I think we could spot things. Pets, I don't like to say they hide their pain. They just deal with their pain so much better. And they don't complain. They don't understand the benefits of complaint, right? So they're not gonna, Maisie's not going to complain. So if it's not BJ with his eagle eye, knowing his dog so well, and it could be super subtle. And the changes that happen slowly over time, you start to not see them. Like, I don't know where 30 pounds came on my body, but over the last 40 years, it slowly came. And you can look at pictures from 30 years ago. I'm like, oh, so sometimes it's really good to have somebody outwardly looking at your pet, seeing how they're moving, seeing where they're at, their vision, things like that. So I would absolutely encourage to go twice a year.
Great. And then on, the heels of that question, there's another question about, this actually reminds me of a question we talk about with people, how to invite early conversations of planning for, A, B, C, D situation with your vet. Like, how does that conversation go?
I think vets would love to have this conversation. Sometimes we are scared, or in general practice, we don't want to look like we're giving up also. And sometimes we don't know what families want sometimes. And we could be accused of like, oh, well, my vet just wants to recommend this, or this. It is our duty to recommend all the options that you have available. Also, one of the options is to not do all of these things towards the end and just focus on caring, right? So, we would welcome to have the conversation. Now, not every doctor is as good as talking about end of life as others, right? Just like I am not good at surgery anymore, should not be allowed in that room. Or people ask me about vaccines and I'm like, oh, I forget how often we should be giving those. But I love the end of life conversation, and there are many doctors out there that could be very good at it as well. So I encourage you to say, hey, listen, I know that, Maisie's a certain age, Maisie's got some issues, and I want to make sure that she lives good until the end. And, BJ texts me all the time, so he's good at this. He's asked his vet.
Oh,
Busted.
Busted.
We've busted for asking for help. Jeez.
Yep, exactly. Even he does.
Well, free help.
Yes,
There's the busted part.
There's the busted part. Jessica, you've had your hand up 1 sec here. Let me just unmute you. You may have to unmute yourself on your end.
Hi. Dr. Miller, I'm a huge fan. I'm an RN, and your work has been a huge part of my journey in medicine. I lost my 15-and-a-half-year-old cat Izzy in December to intestinal lymphoma. We had 22 months of good quality of life, but she was a lot of work. It was hypervigilance. It was weighing her. It was a lot. And I knew it was going to hurt when she died, and I knew the pain was going to be there. What I didn't really anticipate was sort of a PTSD aspect. So 3 weeks ago, my partner and I adopted 2 little 5.5-week-old kittens that don't have a mom, and now they're 8 weeks. And every little thing that has happened with them has set off massive anxiety.
Wow.
And I go right back to that hypervigilance and right back to that fear and right back to that place. And I think it's probably, I know it's common in humans. I see caretakers have that issue, with their life of having a PTSD response to, being a long-term caretaker. But I wasn't anticipating these kittens bringing so much fear back into my life. And I was wondering if you had any advice or experience with that.
Wow. When we talked about when to get another pet, like this is a part of it too. Like, you may not have been ready to do that. And I'm worried about my answer, that some people may not totally agree with it, but I do want to say that one option is also they're young little kittens. They will get adopted quickly, right? Like so if you're not ready, and if it gives you anxiety and your quality of life is not good, you've fostered them basically. And I foster kittens also. So when they don't have mamas, they have to be fostered before usually we can adopt them out. And I foster them and I give them back to the shelter at 8-10 weeks and they're gone in a heartbeat. Right. So know that I don't judge you if that is one of the options that you end up thinking about.
Yeah, I don't even think it's on the table. I mean, we bonded to them. We really loved them. It was just sort of, I think I wanted to share with people that it's probably okay to have some of those feelings come back.
Yeah. It is okay. And
when you're caretaking again, you know, and it's interesting. It's been a journey, but there's a lot there.
Jessica, I hate to say this, but I think you got another year of caretaking. Kittens.
I know.
Are a lot.
Like, they're nuts. The 8 weeks just happened and they became nuts overnight. They just turned 8 weeks and they're nuts.
Yeah, they become nuts. And so I think it's okay to be a little bit anxious over this, to have this PTSD. Like it's a thing. And you do have to be prepared that they are going to be some work for a year. And so help getting support, managing your emotions behind this, making sure that your partner is helping out as much as they can, because
he helps tons. He just doesn't understand the response. He's like, they're little babies. And I'm like, but they're having diarrhea. What if it's this? What if it's that? What if it's parasites? What if, because the nurse brain goes off too. So
I know. Okay. So let me give you some, so the medical stuff, that's going to be much better soon. So so don't worry about that so much. You give it another 4 weeks and they're going to be 12 weeks, and they're going to be through a lot of that diarrhea and all that stuff, and not eating and goopy eyes and all that.
Yes.
I know this because I fostered them. So I know. So what I mean by the next year is the crazy kitten phase.
And that's fine. I think it's the health thing. I think I have like health related trauma
you're gonna
that
be
I
okay.
wasn't expecting.
Yeah, you're gonna be okay. You've got a few more weeks, but they will get better, and they will not. It's an infant right now, basically, right? And so it's a lot of work. You're gonna be okay, but then they're gonna start crawling up your curtains and
they're already getting there. They're already getting there, Dr. Mary.
Hey, Jessica, can I just chime in?
Of course.
Really appreciate your honesty here. This is one thing I hear is just like, maybe you already knew this, but the degree to which we can love these creatures and attach to them is ginormous, infinite, huge. And I hear you calling that out. And also, I think you also gave yourself a clue here as a nurse. I don't pretend to know your daily life, but just being in that healthcare mix and how loss can prime memories of other losses, and how it all can connect, and things going on at work can trigger, and vice versa. So I guess I just hope you'll give yourself all the space you need to really honor what is probably just but a version of grief. And the corollary of love, as Mary brought up earlier. So my one thing is, hopefully you'll give yourself plenty of space and not question your feelings so much. I don't know if that helps at all, but I really
appreciate those words, because Isabel was like my child. She was my family. And it was huge loss. It was profound.
Yeah,
it is.
Period.
And you're a dynamo carer, like in your world, in your work world, and your personal space. So you've got a little bit of burnout like from that too. And so I totally get it. And I know I probably lost a few fans on my first thing, but sometimes we have to.
Well, sometimes that's the right answer. And
sometimes that's the right answer.
Sometimes it is the right answer. And I think that's the theme of palliative care and hospice in general, is sometimes the right answer isn't someone else's right answer. And you have to
you're right.
Sit with that as a clinician and as a person experiencing it. So I really appreciate both of you so very much. And again, Dr. Miller, I've been a huge fan of yours for a long time. So thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. And now I'm one of yours. Thank you very much, my friend.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, we've got a few other questions here. I know we've got one other hand up. Just want to get to a question that was asked earlier. So this person said taking time off to care for end of life, for pets at the end of life is difficult in Japanese culture. This is always a big concern for me. What about in the US? Is there peer pressure in these situations? I think it could cause huge regrets if you miss the end of life with your pets.
That is very interesting. So a lot of companies are like, for instance, Lap of Love, we give people time off if they need to say goodbye. So we understand, obviously, at Lap of Love what it is to say goodbye. So we always support our family, our work family, with giving them the space off. You know, if you're, that's why I also say to plan for your PTO, because you may need to save that time to take a week off to grieve, a week off before to be there before them. So that way, you know, before they say goodbye, because you want to, you know, to have some extra time with them. So I don't think culturally here, most of the people would understand. You will get some people though, that like, really, you're taking time off for a dog. You will get those, but you don't need to be their friend.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's not your boss.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you get to share, and you get to decide how much you share of what, you know, you just may just need, I need time off, period. You know, you don't necessarily need to qualify it if that feels shaky or tricky or off for you. These are your feelings. You get to have them, and they are very, very real.
Okay, I've got one more. Mary, do you have a couple more minutes? I want to be mindful of your time.
Yeah, I got another 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay, great. So Vito, I'm gonna unmute you here.
Hi, Vito.
You may have to unmute yourself on your end.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. My name is Vito. First thing I want to say is I just want to express gratitude for a safe space. I was at a speaker panel by mental health at a film festival in Texas, and I from reading Beginner's Guide to the End, I had all this unexpected grief, or no, unexpected fear about my mortality, which of course, you know, it came up, but it took me by surprise. And I was able to, in a safe space, talk about that. And it was really it's surprisingly healing as how I was surprised by this, you know, new recognition of, or deeper understanding of mortality. But then I, writing my will with no one to leave my worldly goods to, it underlined the fact that I never found romantic love in this life, and I always thought that I would. And not that not that my life is over or I have health issues or anything, but there was a deeper realization again of, I really thought that I would be sharing my life with someone, and so far that hasn't happened. And wow, you know, there's actually no guarantee. So obviously I'm reconsidering an animal companion in my life, and two things happened. One was the grief, which of course we'll talk about. But the first thing is I had really well-meaning people say, like, oh, you know, if you don't find love in your 20s or 30s, it's perfectly fine to, you know, kind of have an animal companion in your life, and it's sort of like a good substitute. And as wonderful as it is, and I welcome an animal companion in my life, I just want another human being to hear, like, this is not some tacit statement to life. This isn't some gesture saying I've given up, you know, and I just want someone to hear that. And then the other thing that happened was I had it was kind of funny because I'm always man and his dog kind of type. And this cat adopted me while I was in the garage.
Yay.
Like, yeah. And she was like, you're the one, buddy. I mean, she even laid out and rubbed her back on the concrete, like, let's make beautiful kittens together. I mean, it was, you know, I didn't know, I always had a dog. I didn't know cats did that when they show affection to you. Never got over it, you know, but it was just that kind of, you know, I didn't know cats did that. And so
let me tell, I love it. I always say, Vito, like, we usually go to find our dogs, and the cats are the ones that find us. Like,
Yeah, that's absolutely what it was. And
Yeah.
at first, so friendly, I thought, okay, it's someone else's cat. But then I picked her up and she was really skinny. And I fed her, and she, I had, obviously I didn't have cat food. I had some tuna, and she just gorged on it so much she threw up afterward. So I realized she was hungry, and then, and like 15 years later, she dies, and the word, and which is bad enough, and she died like 2 days before the pandemic. So I was all alone. Work 2 days later, called me and said, we're going to start working remotely, and I had no one to talk with about it. And well, I feel like this is a safe space, so I could say my parents came from Italy, and Italian men can cry, and I cried like a boy. I cried like I forgot how your chest heaves. Children jag, and well, I was all alone with it, and once again, just to have another human being to realize that, there was a big chunk of my life, but it kind of, it was a bit surprising, not that I didn't love her, and I told her all the time, right? And I even teased her. I said, I really like dogs, but you're okay. You can be with me, and so anyway, it was just, I'm so glad that the last slide came up, because now that I'm reconsidering an animal companion, that grief came back a little bit. And I know I can't make me afraid, but it is, it was so surprising. There is that little bit of like, oh boy, when this animal goes, it's not going to be as easy as I thought.
Yeah. Oh, Vito. Hey, buddy. Yeah, I remember meeting you in Texas.
Oh, no.
Very, very fondly. Then as now. And let me just say again, you're onto something in a lot of ways here. And you do have us, and we hear you. And I'm sure many others do too. I remember what you did to that room in Austin. That whole room was in the palm of your hand. And it was so. Anyway, we hear you. And amen. These are not, even the word pet bothers me. It feels like a trinket or something,
Yeah.
This is big stuff. And I'm just so glad and grateful that you're, say, man enough to own it and say it or something like that.
Yeah.
Very beautiful, brother. And I don't know if these are substitutes for human relations. They're kind of their own thing for me.
They're their own.
They're their own thing. It's amazing, whatever the heck it is. But anyway, Vito, thank you so much for speaking up then, as and now. And you definitely have us.
Yeah. And Vito, what was your girl's name?
Well, I'm bilingual, so I called her. There's a name in Italian for mouse. I called her Mouse. Topolina, which is it means little mouse in Italian, which of course is a big joke because she was a cat, but she was undersized and she had the color of a mouse. So and one of those moments where when I first got her and I decided to keep her, I said, I'm going to call you Topolina, and she came up to me like,
yeah,
it's not provable, and I'm not a superstitious man, but it was a sweet moment.
Listen, they haven't disproven prayer and many magical things, and so I think though Topolina would say, "Andiamo, let's go find another love."
Very good.
Thank you, Vito.
Yeah, thank you, Vito, and thank you, Mary, for the extra time. Really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Thank you,
very
everyone,
welcome
for being here too. Gosh, it was beautiful.
No, I don't mind. I have the honor of speaking to an elementary school group of kids today about being a vet. So
Awesome.
hope to inspire.
I'm sure you will, girl. Thank you, Mary, and thank you everybody for chiming in and just being present and just being here with us. This is a beautiful, enormous conversation, and thank you for holding it with us, Mary.
Oh, you're very welcome. And Sonia, to email me if there's any questions that, come through that I can help answer and shoot back to the list. I'm more than happy to do that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for being here. Wishing everyone a wonderful weekend.
Bye, guys.
Bye.